Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, and I'm probably in a better position to say something. Me? Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the joint workshop between the Leesburg City Commission and Lake County Board of County Commissioners. You have an agenda, should have been at the front desk if you needed one, as well as some other things, items and maps, and you will have a presentation on the board. We do have our Board of County Commissioners, we have our county attorney, we have our interim county manager, we have our city manager, City of Leesburg, and the city attorney who will be representing us and our clerk. At this time, I'll go into roll call. Who's going to do our roll call? Andy, you doing the city roll call? Yes, ma'am. We just,
This is just different for us.
just on the record.
Just on the record, who's here?
Oh, you're okay. All right. Call it different. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Present.
Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Mayor Christie?
Here. Did I turn it over now?
Okay,
Stephanie
all
on.
right. And then on the county commission side, we actually have two of our county commissioners are not available to be here physically. They are on Zoom. We have them on the computer over here. So I'll turn it over to Christy with the clerk's office, or how should we do our roll call, or should I just acknowledge who's here and who's not?
So I'll go ahead and just acknowledge that currently we have present County Commissioner Leslie Campion for District 4, County Commissioner Douglas Shields for District 1, County Commissioner Joshua Blake for District 5, and participating by Zoom is County Commissioner and Chairman Sean Parks for District 1, and County Commissioner Kirby Smith for District 3.
And before we move to the next part of the meeting, which was a presentation, I just wanted to use this opportunity to say on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners that we're very appreciative to have this chance to sit down and have a dialogue with the commissioners of the City of Leesburg. We appreciate the fact that our staffs have been working together, particularly our public works staff. I know has provided a lot of comments on these two particular annexation cases, and we appreciate the time that has been taken into consideration to those comments. We have received a lot of public comment at our county commission meetings over the last probably 6 months, maybe even more, but particularly on these two annexation applications. And so we come today with a lot of the information and knowledge that we've received from those public comments, a lot of emails, a lot of dialogue between us and unincorporated residents about these applications. And so I think that some folks might have come today thinking that we were going to have an actual public hearing, but the public hearing is the proceeding that will be before you all as the City of Leesburg on January the 3rd. And that's when public comment would be taken as a matter of due process. Today, the intent was for us to kind of bring together the things that, our thoughts and our concerns and the knowledge we have from hearing from residents, and have that open dialogue with you all, and help to give us a chance to understand your perspective and you to understand our perspective, and see where we might be able to find some common ground. So with that being said, I just wanted to put the audience on notice of that as far as how we're going to run this meeting. So I'll turn it over to the mayor and the City of Leesburg.
This time our city manager will do a presentation.
Yeah, I won't be super formal. Mike, are you running, will you put the PowerPoint up for me real quick? I thought, obviously there's a lot of issues floating on and comments and these type of things, so I thought it would be important just to give you a little bit of city perspective. I know you're dealing with 5 elected officials, so everybody's a little bit different. But I think the boiled down version of how the city is approaching growth is, and specifically these 2 annexations that the city's dealing with, which I'll refer to as Whispering Hills and Hodges effects, and I think where the legislative body here in Leesburg is at. So just real quick, and mission purpose, and I'm gonna call it, instead of the city, I'm gonna use municipal corporation, because that's what you are. You guys are a political subdivision. We're a municipal corporation, and I think in that lies kind of some areas of dispute on how we perceive our governmental roles and what our functions are. And typically, counties are rural, and municipal corporations are urban. So I think those 2 different frames kind of get us a little cross-eyed. And depending too, counties are all, around the state are all different. There are some very urban counties like Palm Beach, Brevard, right? And then there's some very rural counties like Alachua and up north. And then there's some of those counties in the middle, like Lake, that have both. So having said that, our roles in governance are different. So why is there a municipal corporation? So section 165, and I'm not going to be an attorney, but I will refer to some statute language that's guiding the proceedings, so I don't claim to be an expert there. But 165 of Florida statutes outlines the purpose of municipal corporations. And our purpose is to allow for orderly patterns of growth, to assure adequate quality and quantity of local public services, and believe it or not, to ensure financial integrity. Those were words from statutes. I got a chuckle from that. It's in statutes. We have to be financially pure, however you define that. Okay, so the next part of that too is for a purpose. Florida statutes then says that if you've got these areas, you can incorporate, form your municipal corporation. And so that kind of goes before annexation. So you're an island of urbanness out there and you want to incorporate and become a city. Statute says, well, this is how you do it, this is why you do it. And that's 165.061. That sets the standard. So I put these standards in there, and they were developed in 2007 as amended by the statute. So I thought they were important to the argument, so defining what's rural, what's urban. And so statute says when you're going to incorporate and create that municipal corporation, you have to be compact and contiguous. A city population must be 5,000 in counties that are larger than 75,000. So if there was going to be a little municipal corporation that formed in Lake, it has to be at least 5,000 people. This is, I thought an interesting one too. A city must have an average density of at least 1.5 persons per acre. That's not units, that's persons, so that's a little different. I think 1.5 persons per acre is probably rural, but I think that litmus test there is setting the benchmark on at least. So that's the flavor of municipal corporations are urban, not rural. That's an important statement because as our planning department is doing their thing, they're urban thinkers, not rural thinkers. And then a city has to be 2 miles away from another city, municipal corporation, and then you must have a charter. So that's the creation of a municipal corporation. So next slide. You're already on it. Oh, go back, Mike, if you would. That one, yep. Okay, so once a municipal corporation is formed, the statutes contemplate that there will be a need for adjusting boundaries. And an important comment, too, I wanted to make is municipal corporations don't go out and seek growth. It's not like the economic development that we talked about, where we go out and we see corporations and we give tax credits and we do these to bring industry and commerce to our corporations. Growth finds the municipal corporation. So we didn't go out and seek Whispering Hills. We didn't go out and seek Hodges. To that matter, we didn't even go out and seek the Villages. Growth finds municipal corporations, and then our job is to manage that growth. So the statutes then kind of contemplates that municipal corporations are going to need to adjust their boundaries. So there's the statute language, 171.021. Why do you have to adjust? And adjust can be annex or contract, but typically I don't think I've ever seen a contraction, but typically it's an annexation. And why do you do that? To ensure sound urban development and accommodate growth, establish uniform legislative standards, ensure an efficient provision of urban services, and then to ensure that areas are not annexed unless municipal services can be provided. So statute says too, you got to be compact and contiguous. And then the remaining section of 171 sets out different stuff on annexations and that type of thing. And typically, the annexations that Leesburg has dealt with have been voluntary annexations. So that's a person or a corporation who owns parcels, wants to bring that into the city and develop it. Okay, so next slide. So once we figure all that out, then we go to part 2 of 171, which turns everything upside down. And in short, part 2 says that if a municipal corporation has an agreement with a county, then you can change the rules to mutually suit your desire or your mission to provide those urban services. So November 24, 2014, the City of Leesburg and Lake County formed an ISBA, Inter-Service Boundary Agreement, so we're going to say that a lot. The ISBA is that agreement that 171 Part 2 contemplates. The city's position, too, is that our ISBA is still in full force and effect. And so then we throw in the annexations. The city's position is that Whispering Hills is compact and contiguous, and we'd point out that it's surrounded on at least 2 sides of urban growth. And some of that, so the double entendre, if that is a word or whatever, it's unincorporated urban growth. So in areas where the county has grown and it's unincorporated, it looks urban, not rural. So Whispering Hills, again, the city's position is it's compact and contiguous, and it's surrounded on 2 sides by urban growth. Hodges is the next one. Hodges lies south. I have a map for those in the audience coming up so you can see everything. Hodges, we would contend, is not contiguous until it's annexed with Whispering Hills. And then the city of Leesburg has incorporated other non-contiguous, unincorporated territory without objection from the county. Next slide. So once we have why municipal corporations are formed, how they adjust their limits, there's kind of the mission, purpose, now the mission. Our mission is really super simple, and statutes really doesn't out there say what you do. It does a little bit, but there's not a core purpose of a municipal corporation. But we do a lot of stuff. So those things are providing those urban services, water, wastewater, electric. I threw in natural gas. It's not in the statutes, but you can do that. That's solid waste. And then I called it the general services, because all those services that you find in the general fund. So I broke it down that way. And then those general services are probably the ones that people relate to the most on what a municipal corporation does, which is provides roads, transportation, law enforcement, fire and rescue, zoning, parks and recreation, library, and cultural facilities. So really in 6 in general services is where sometimes I think those county and municipal corporation lines rub. And in other more urban counties, my understanding is that Part 72 or 171 Part 2 was formed out of a water sewer dispute between Sarasota County and the city of Sarasota, and that's how that born, that's my understanding, I could be wrong, based in water. So so when Part 2 was created, it was so that the municipal corporations who provide urban services and those counties who have become urban, who provide urban services mix, that's how that was born. And so we do see a little mixing in water and sewer. We don't here in Lake. So it's probably a good thing, and it's probably something that we should take advantage of. And I think it might be, if we look at that provision of an urban service, might be some answers to some of our questions. So that's what we do. So let me jump now to the matter at hand. Flip the chart. So this is a really big chart. This is the city of Leesburg. It almost, that whole white square almost represents the boundaries of our ISBA as well. So, longest story short, just some quick facts and to demonstrate how growth has affected Leesburg and where we're managing it now. In 2000, Leesburg was 15,956 people. In 2010, Leesburg was 20,117 people. That's an annual growth of 2.4% from 2000 to 2010. Our new number for 2020 is 27,000. So from 2010 to 2020, we grew at a rate of about 3.4%. I'm going to say that's probably a little misleading because that's on an annual basis. It has sped up in the past year or so, maybe two. But for a 20-year growth period, 3% growth. I just thought that was an interesting number because 3% growth represents good growth rate. Not too fast, not too slow, manageable. The next one is since about 2005, and so when that spiked from 15,956 to 20,000, that peak started coming towards the tail end of that, and then everybody, you know how the world worked, and then everything crashed. But so since 2005, the city has platted and approved, or I should say not platted, approved 51 developments about. Those developments, if you add up all the approved units that could be built in the city, it is 25,214. That's, folks in the audience, that's in the gray chart. Those are the numbers that I feared that you wouldn't be able to read. But what we do in this chart, which I passed out to the commission and the Board of County Commissioners, is the chart with each of the subdivisions that have been approved by this body since about 2005. And again, there's 51, add up the lots, it's 25,214. And so if you want to put that then in a population number, multiply that number by 2.2-ish. This shows all the locations. The circles, there's little yellow circles on the map, if you can kind of see it, and I'll get up. These circles, there's been 7 non-contiguous annexations. So our position would be that since 2014, the city of Leesburg has done about seven non-contiguous annexations. Most of them have actually been northeast Leesburg, kind of in that Radio Road 44-473 corridor. And only about 3 have been on the south side of Leesburg, down where we're talking now. So one is I'll get the name for you. It's called the Leiden Nichols subdivision. The other one, just on the other side of that corner, was the regional hospital. And then the White Marsh, I do believe, is the third. And then Hodges, we're contemplating, and Whispering Hills. Again, our position is we're not calling that a non-contiguous annexation. We think under 171 we can do that. So let me blow up the map and get to where we're talking, and then I'll be done. Mike, one more slide. So this is the final slide. This takes that map and blows it up to the south side, so you can see, that Leesburg has really 3 corridors of growth. the northwest, the south, and the west. But today we're just talking about this side. So with that being said, where are we at? Whispering Hills lies basically west or east of 27, adjacent to 4 major subdivisions that are urban in nature. One is Arlington Ridge, which is incorporated. The second one is Legacy, which is incorporated. And then it's tucked into next to 2 unincorporated urban areas, one being Highland Lakes, the other being Plantation, and then Whispering Hills tucks in right underneath those with Hodges to follow. So obviously it is a big chunk of territory, which is why it's getting the look-see that it's getting. I think the city would say that, this is kind of our job. This is what we do. We manage the growth that comes before us. We manage it pursuant to our land development regulations and provide it with those urban services. So with that, Mayor,
Thank you, sir.
I'll turn it back to you.
Ms. Campion?
Okay, appreciate the presentation, and a couple things that come to mind. You mentioned it's kind of interesting, you mentioned the South Florida case as being the genesis of Part 2, the non-contiguous.
Was I right? Did I remember that right?
Well, possibly that might have been part of it.
Possibly might be right.
Interestingly,
That's good for me.
as I recall, the Groveland and the Leesburg ISBAs were focused on 2 primary things. One was closest unit response for fire. So we were trying to figure out how we could cover these areas with fire and work that out with the City of Leesburg and the City of Groveland. But the other big one was the extension of water and sewer lines. And Groveland was pushing in the direction north and east, and you guys were pushing south. And the reason why it was important to negotiate an ISBA that included Groveland as well was to make sure that water and sewer lines weren't just put out to claim future territory. And so if a ISBA boundary was delineated, then everybody could back off and say, okay, we'll extend services when those services are needed, but we won't extend them just for the sake of trying to grow and claim territory. And that was just something I remember from that time being a big part of the discussion. The land use side of it really wasn't addressed. The county had put in place this rural protection area out in this exact area that we're talking about, and it was the Yalaha Rural Protection Area, basically, Yalaha up Lake Apopka. So I think the understanding, even though it wasn't delineated in that ISBA, was that this rural protection area would be given consideration by the city as annexation applications were received, and whether they were appropriate or not, or whether the designations, the land use, the densities that were put on this property would be consistent with that. And from the standpoint of the unincorporated residents that we've heard from, this is something that they relied upon, that they lived in a rural area, they chose to live in a rural area, they loved the rural lifestyle, and the rural protection area gave them a level of protection that's how it would be in the future. And so with your, sort of purpose and mission as you described it, Mr. Menard, that as applications come in, you manage that growth. And I guess our ask to you is, can you manage that growth and process those applications in concert with our rural protection area? And we understand that from a city's perspective, 1 unit to 5 acres, which is what the rural protection area calls for, that's not something that lines up with a city's growth pattern, obviously, 1 unit to 5 acres. Could there be a way to annex areas in the rural protection area and still achieve the purposes you're trying to achieve, and still insulate and protect the character and the quality of life of the residents that want to continue to be in a rural area. And that's where, I guess, our presentation starts. And that, is Tim here? Okay. So we have been talking with a renowned land planner who has done land planning throughout the U.S. And his whole focus is how do you create subdivisions and developments that can preserve the rural character and preserve rural spaces and green spaces and functional open spaces, and lay out development in a way that it's actually less expensive for the developer because you keep the infrastructure very tight and you cluster your project, and then you leave green spaces open, and you start with the land itself. You look at the features, you look at the little lakes spotted across the property, and you try to link natural systems together, create wildlife corridors, create open spaces, and then you go in and go, okay, where would we put the houses? Where would we put the development? And this is something that we're hoping to present to other municipalities around the county as a way to address this conflict that we're going to have throughout Lake County, where we have rural areas, we have a desire to protect our quality of life and our character in Lake County, and how this in the cities still want to grow and landowners still want to annex. How can we blend those two? And this, we hope, would be the answer, and we're asking that you would look at this and take it under consideration. And so I'll turn it over to Tim McClendon, the planning director.
Absolutely. For the record, Tim McClendon, Director of Planning and Zoning for Lake County. I am a certified planner through the American Planning Association. Sort of here to give you an overview of what rural conservation subdivisions are. As Commissioner Campion stated here, the Lake County staff is currently developing some guidelines, hopefully adopting an ordinance here in the next month or two pertaining to rural conservation subdivisions and what that criteria would be. Effectively, what are rural conservation subdivisions? Why do we need them? What we're seeing based on the growth patterns occurring in the county and also within the city limits. This is sort of reactionary to it. So what you see here on the screen visually is probably a better understanding of what rural conservation subdivisions truly are. On the left side here, this is your typical, this is the same parcel, both right and left sides of the screen. So the left side is your conventional subdivision type, no true connected open spaces, just what planners lovingly refer to as cookie cutter type development. So on the right side of the screen, what you see here is actually the same amount of density on this specific project, but you actually cluster the development into a specific area. It does a couple of things. One, it connects green spaces, protects wildlife corridors, and also just establishes a more rural feel for the properties on the western side of this specific parcel and on the south side. But again, this is more of it's all about environmentally sound design. Again, the focus here is large open spaces, again, to be more compatible and consistent with the existing rural developments. So moving along, hopefully, there we go. Some of these examples that have been done in the past, I'm going to run through these here real quickly. This is an example up in Pennsylvania, designed by Randall Arndt, who Commissioner Campion mentioned. And before I go too much further, we did have that presentation from Mr. Arndt maybe 2 months ago at this point to the Board of County Commissioners. I would highly suggest going back and watching that. What you're getting from me here is a real Cliff Notes version. I've done this a number of times, so apologies if I actually speed through this. But what you see here is a 50-acre parcel. Would effectively, with the 1 to 5 requirements that the county has, you end up with 10 dwelling units. It's all clustered into a specific area, the least environmentally impactful side of, or at least on this site. You have 40 acres of open space. Again, the development patterns would be more consistent with with those open spaces on the north and east and southern side. You also talk about infrastructure costs, clustering this kind of development, leaving the open space instead of utilizing the entire site. Obviously, more environmentally sound. Stormwater is kept to stormwater runoff is kept to a minimum. You have low impact development standards, LID. But again, just moving through some of these other examples, hopefully. This one is right in our own backyard. This is Wolf Branch Road is on the south side here. This is the Parks at Wolf Branch. This was a 116-acre site. Basically, it breaks down to 1 dwelling unit per 1 acre. So 116 dwelling units on 116 acres. 50% open space. We keep the environmentally, again, from an environmental impact standpoint, the entire property is not clear cut. You keep existing trees and actually cluster the development around environmentally sensitive areas. So keeping that large cluster of trees, none of those have to be removed. Limited infrastructure requirements from a road standpoint. But this one is really the jewel for Lake County. This was a Randall Arndt specific project that he put together for us in the early 2000s. But this is an actual true product in what it actually looks like from a built environment. And again, this is just more ideas of what truly are rural conservation subdivisions. You have main thoroughfares. The idea, this is on the north side here, this is your more conventional type of development. You have lots that are rear loaded here. So what you're seeing driving along a roadway is actual backyards of lot owners. So you're looking at pools or fences. Whereas if you design this from an environmentally sensitive standpoint, you leave large open spaces against an actual road. And what you see is front faces, or the front of the homes, in lieu of the rear loaded, or what Mr. Arndt refers to as fanny loaded development. Same thing on the western side here, the example. These roadways are coming through, same parcel, same density, but again, you're staring at backyards as you're coming through development, whereas in this instance, those homes would front on that internal roadway. So again, when you're driving by, you have natural open spaces that you see. The better example of that, what you can see in real life there, again, back to the Wolf Branch, but the existing open spaces are kept. So that's a good 300 feet off of that roadway. So you really don't even truly see any of the homes when it's done correctly. But again, you've seen some of these maps. I had about 30 handouts. I think they went quickly this morning. You can't really see this too well here, but this is, again, Highway 27, the Whispering Hills project. Hodges outlined on the southern side there in purple. But what you can see here on the aerial is this is an established rural area. Not much has happened in this specific area. And from the county standpoint, we're really targeting these rural conservation subdivisions in environmentally sensitive areas. So all of our rural protection areas, including the Yalaha one that this specific project is in, as well as the Wakaiva, Ocala National Forest, and the critical area of state concern, the Green Swamp. And again, just more of the same here. A little cleaner to see without the aerials involved. But again, Highway 27. The actual rural protection areas crosshatch in that light gray. So the majority of the Whispering Hills and the Hodges are within that RPA, the rural protection area. And then again, more of the same, but you can actually see where the city limits are on this specific project, and the rural protection area is the green dotted, so it swings all the way down south past Hodges and continues eastwards towards Howey. And I think the last slide we have here is actually the road conditions. I don't know if you want to get to that yet. Otherwise, I can have Jeff Earhart with Public Works talk about this for board consideration or discussion. But with that wraps up my end of this. I'd be happy to answer any questions. But again, I highly recommend going back and watching that hour-long presentation from Randall Arndt, who thoroughly goes over, he's a sort of, what I've told my board, it was a master's level class on conservation subdivisions. With that, I'll turn it back over.
And one of the things that we learned in our presentation from Randall Arndt is that it's a density-neutral solution. So, ideally, from our standpoint, from the unincorporated resident standpoint, yes, we'd like to see 1 unit to 5 acres. But we know realistically, as the city continues to grow, and we can argue about whether we think this is actually contiguous and compact, but at some point, you will grow and it will be contiguous and compact. Whether we can agree that that's now or not, if you do decide to process this and approve it, which I would argue that you don't have to, just because you get an application doesn't mean you have to approve it. You have a right to approve it if you choose to, if it meets the statutes, but you don't have to. So with the density neutral solution, if you've got a developer that's asking for X number of units per acre, and you think that's a reasonable number, you could use the conservation design to put those units more centralized into the center of the property. You could put large lots around the boundaries of the property so that the people that are in the rural communities, they back up to other 5-acre tracts or 2-acre tracts, or you could use the large buffers like 200 and 300 feet of open space and put your open space around all of your perimeters so that you can create your density centralized in a way that the rural community can still coexist and not feel that they've got a subdivision literally right in their backyard. And so that's why we were hopeful that the city would consider, being that this is a rural protection area, that the city would consider doing master planning with the county and maybe a joint planning agreement that could incorporate this type of design into this area and look at transportation so that traffic could be taken away from the rural roads and could be moved directly out to 27 and not change the character and make the rural roads completely, into an urbanized type of situation, which would change this area forever. So those were my thoughts. I sent an email to you all with some of these ideas and concepts, hoping that we might be able to actually back off and work for a couple months on some type of a joint master plan, engage the services of Randall Arndt, have him take a look at it. This could be just an incredible template that other places around the county could look at and see how you could actually have a mixed-use project and live and coexist with a rural community that wants to stay intact. So this is the part of the meeting where we kind of go to open dialogue. So I would turn it over to the mayor, and then I know that we've got Mr. Smith and Commissioner Parks on the computer as well, who I'm sure would want to weigh in.
Okay, so I guess I'll open up to the city commission and county commission. We can just have dialogue. So anyone from the city would like to start?
I'd just like to throw a question out there. In looking at the two different projects, they're distinctly different. And my question to you guys is, would you consider the current Marsan Whispering Hills to be environmentally friendly or not in your, in the outlay that they have?
Do you want to go? Okay, so I would say that from this type of planning perspective, there are things that could be done on the front end that could assure that it would be environmentally friendly and functional open space friendly. The design right now shows a mixed-use project all around these little lakes. I'm not sure that you could do that. They look like they might be, one of them might be a sinkhole type lake. I don't know that you could even do that. If Randall Arndt were to design it, he might look at it and go, let's connect all of those together and make that your functional open space and move your mixed use a little bit further away, still have the view and the aesthetic qualities of that, but he would probably look at that and design it differently. But I think the coexistence between Whispering Hills and the rural community that's around it, I think the buffers would have to be significantly larger, you know, like 200 feet or so. We had a project we approved in South Lake County on the Orange County line. And that's how, it's a good example of how a developer was able to take their density and bring it internal and create buffers that, I can't remember, I think they were 200 feet? They were about 200 feet. And they left the existing trees, and if the trees died or something happened to the trees, they would have to replant them. So they were forested buffers. And so we had 5-acre tracts that abutted this one in South Lake, and they put in these 200-foot wide buffers. And that was a tremendous help for easing that transition between 5-acre tract living and subdivision living.
I know everybody's kind of quiet, but let me just say, being on the council since 2004, I think Leesburg has done a fair job. We heard from the presentation on growth. We've managed growth. We all knew, I knew that US 27 was one of our high growth areas. That was going to grow no matter what, because of being a US highway, connectivity to the turnpike, and now the villages coming in on Highway County Road 470, which we've tried for years to get something done with 470. Of course, you know, the reality is roads don't get built until houses are built and the impact fees are paid. People talk about schools. Leesburg schools have always had a negative knock because we don't have new families coming to our city. This is allowing new families coming to our city, which will improve our school. The school board does not have Leesburg slated for a new school or even remodeling schools. Fruitland Park Elementary, Beverly Shores Elementary, these schools, Treadway doesn't even have walkways to cover the kids from going from portable 1 to portable 2 in a rainstorm. So I look at growth. We have a big mall, Al talked about near Silver Lake. We got a mall that's suffering, need help. That help doesn't come until people move into our city. US 27 has been projected as a growth area for Leesburg for years. I think the Marson group with Whispering Hills, I do commend the developer because they have met with the residents on numerous occasions. They have changed their plans to accommodate the residents. Probably one of the first developers I've seen without the city of Leesburg saying, go do this, go do that, we're not going to approve it. They did that on their own. So kind of ask the developer at this point, go change your plan, put it on hold for 3 or 4 months. These two Hodges and Whispering Hills won't be the last two that's coming on 27. I was telling the city manager, and I got really frustrated the other day. I was coming from Orlando, my gas needle was low. I got off the turnpike. There's not one gas station on the east side of 27 from the turnpike until Main Street in Leesburg. That's almost 14 miles, no gas station. You have to get on the left side and when you get to the head station in Oklahoma to get gas. And if you, after 9:30, you make the left, go back to Mineola because you're trying to risk, do I go to Leesburg, run out of gas, or I go to Mineola? Well, the Texaco closed early, so now you make the left turn, you gotta go all the way into Mineola just to get gas. So from an urban city that I see our city growing as an urban city from 27 to Leesburg, growth is gonna happen. So how do we make it happen? How do we assist for good development? I think our staff has worked really hard trying to get development that's gonna be nice, and we've had the discussion at the city council. You know, we try not to do cookie cutters. We try to have good aesthetics coming down 27. We've talked about for years, how do we clean up 27? You get into the interior of Leesburg, we have older hotels, we have derelict buildings. How do we make our entrance of our city prettier, nicer, more attractive for people coming in? So we have an opportunity with new development coming in. Our staff has been working to make that entryway into Leesburg top notch. So these two developers that come in and say, okay, you know, 9th hour, January 3rd, we have a meeting, and we don't want an adversarial effect from the county. We've worked well with Lake County. Since I've been on the commission, we've had some hiccups years ago, but I think my staff currently has worked well with Lake County, and I would like to continue to work well with Lake County. I prefer for Ms. Marsh not to come and object to our hearing on January 3rd, unless the county can take that approach and go to every city and object. I don't want Leesburg to be the guy or the city that says, we're gonna object to your development because you approved annexation because some residents said they don't like it. Well, that happens in any development. I can promise you, any development that comes, residents are gonna come to that podium and say, we don't like it. The schools can't accommodate the growth. The roads are terrible. So, and we try our best to listen to the residents and do what we think is best for the entire city of Leesburg, to accommodate rural protection areas, to accommodate the future growth, but to make sure that our city is financially strong and has integrity, and make sure that these developments can coexist. I know I've tried to do that since I've been on the commission. I know we've heard from other commissioners, and we have, Al said, we got 5 commissions with different mindsets and different thoughts and ideas, but at the end of the day, we always try to do what's best for Leesburg and the future of our city. So that's kind of my 25 cents. I don't know if any other commissioners have anything they'd like to say before the county gets into a dialogue.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess one, the rural protection areas, those clearly were not in the ISBA. We can say they were contemplated. That's just simply not true. We have not heard a single thing about an RPA until McElwee came up. So they exist, they're real, but to say that that was part of the ISBA, I think that's very misleading. Those are separate things. And I'm happy to talk about the ISBA. I kind of thought that was what the purpose of the meeting was, to review the ISBA, but the focus seems to be on these 2 developments that are not part of the ISBA. They're contiguous annexations, and my kind of viewpoint is a contiguous annexation, that's a Leesburg issue. In terms of these kind of this land planners designs, they're nice, but these communities, I mean, these are luxury communities, and this idea that this is what growth should look like, that to me, that's what I call a luxury belief. That's I have a nice home, I have land, and that's the only way it should look for anyone else. But the fact of the matter is, we've got a lot of people that want to own homes that can't afford a $500,000 or more home. And that's what these are. 1 unit per acre, that's a $500,000 house today. You just can't get it. I mean, we need between 3 and 4 units per acre. With land pricing what it is, these examples, they're also old. Today's market's entirely different. Raw land, 30,000 an acre undeveloped. When you factor in the increased development and building cost, it's about impossible to build anything for under 300 grand a year with density. So you start taking away density, we're not going to have anywhere for our workforce to live, and that's what we have the biggest demand for in the Leesburg area is for nurses, for teachers, firefighters, police officers. They want to own a home, and this kind of rural area with 1 per 5 or 1 per 1 just doesn't work. And that's why they're coming to the city and not the county. You'd need multifamily to get the density that and some of it was mentioned, I believe, in Commissioner Campion's email is, maybe multifamily, but that's not what people want in the market right now. They don't want to live in multifamily. They want to own their own home. The pandemic has really pushed on that. People want to have something that is their own. They want to have their own backyard, even if it's a small one. That's really important. And I don't think we should be telling people how and where they have to live. And then in terms of roads, I mean, I agree we have a road problem, and I was very encouraged to see the county, for the first time in 30 years, spend some general fund money on roads this year. I think that was a great step. But the problem is, it was the first time in 30 years. That's the problem, is Leesburg, we generate over $8.5 million a year of ad valorem taxes that go to the county. That doesn't, we provide our own police, we provide our own parks, our own recreation, our own fire. So maybe we spend some of that money on roads. The $2 million is a great start, but it needs to be a lot more. And then we can't force developers to build what we want. It's got to be what the market wants. The idea that we would hire their planner for them, if they could build that project and sell it, they'd do it in a heartbeat because they know they'd get no opposition. The developers don't want opposition. They want a project that's easy to build, but these just aren't economically feasible projects. And then on the schools, it is a huge issue here in Lake County. We need more people. Leesburg High School has less students than when I graduated in 2002, significantly less. We need growth here in Leesburg. We've allowed Claremont to grow, right? Claremont's gone from 10,000 residents in 2000 to 43,000 residents, and those were all okay developments. We've, as Al mentioned, we've done several non-contiguous annexations, several contiguous annexations in the RPAs, no problem, but now we get people coming in complaining to the county commission, and now we want to get involved in Leesburg's business. And then the other thing is, in terms of whether these are non-contiguous or not, I will say that, we had a lawsuit on the McElroy, which is in the same RPA, and that unfortunately didn't go all the way through to get a ruling, but it was settled in a way that which the development is going forward with no changes. So that should give you a little idea as to where a potential legal challenge would go. Obviously, anyone can sue anyone for anything, but we're clearly on very firm grounding here with these being contiguous annexations and meeting all the criteria and staff. So if we want to talk about the ISBA again, I'm open to that specifically. What were the concerns of the ISBA? But in terms of Leesburg's planning, that's a Leesburg issue, and should remain so.
If Commissioner Roebuck just brought a couple perspective points, I like to drum out, and I kind of touched on them a little bit in my opening. So let me expand on that, because I can't. We hear that phrase all the time. It's driven by the market. It drives me crazy, but it is driven by the market. Commissioner Roebuck spoke on that. Again, the city perspective, I think clearly this is in our wheelhouse. Clearly, I don't think we're acting outside the ISBA or the annexation issues. So we've got this urban problem. We've got an urban growth problem. And I respect where the county is with that rural development type of planning mechanism you brought. And if I think it is the desire of the city as well as the county, then the county needs to bring some skin to the game and help us create and make that rural development marketable in an urban area. How do you make that profitable in a market area? How do you get contractors to want to build 1 unit per house? You got to subsidize them. You got to build their sewers. You got to build their roads. And we already complain that developers don't do that because of their impact on growth. But that's how you make, if we want Lake to look and have that rural, urban, or that rural feel all around it, then that growth has got to be subsidized. I sent your former, and I don't know if I agree with this, but it's a concept. I sent your former county manager an email back in June. I could probably dig it up. But it was on this, when we got the recovery monies, and how were we going to spend that? And what the county got the 70 million, we got 11. And it was how do we spend this money best to address the issues that the money was spent for? At that time, as when this argument started popping up, I'm like, well, hey, if we want these urban type of develop or rural type of developments, use some of that money to build infrastructure. Give it to the cities. Why give it to the cities? Because of our jurisdictions and our boundaries, and we're the utility providers, the county's not. But in doing so, what you then do is create the market to make that $500,000 home, which is what it is, and that's on the low end, that $300,000 home. So it becomes affordable. So there's got to be, and if that doesn't happen, then you're back to the old-fashioned way of growth, which is the statutes, which is what cities do, and then you're not breaking the boundary of how you keep a rural feel. Now, I'm not saying that that's what we want, but it seems that's what you've said that the county wants, is this rural feel for Lake to stay the way Lake is. Well, then Lake needs to do something to promote that.
So I think Mr. Arendt would say that, like, the one-to-one was an example in certain locations. I think the idea here was go density neutral in that you know what your developer wants. And Mr. Arendt would say that his product is actually more feasible, it's more cost-effective for the developer, but it also produces a higher-end, more desirable product at the end of the day. He would say that the market would respond to this, and we've got examples of how it has. So it's not far-fetched to say this is not pricing this out of the market, this is not creating a product that would be outside of the market. This would be extremely desirable. So, you know, that's where I think having him make a presentation and actually us work together on something, we could look at things like the uses that the mayor referenced that aren't available out in this area and actually do some master planning. So it's not, You know, all you have to do is drive around Lake County and see what happens when you just let it happen. You drive to Oviedo, and you can see what happens when you just let it happen. You drive to Apopka, see what happens when you just let it happen. And I think all we were asking for is, can we do better? We don't have much left in Lake County to do better with. And this is an incredibly special, beautiful area. We know what it will look like if it's not designed in a way that is better than what we've seen in other places. And I guess that was the ask, was let's bring an expert in and let's see if we can actually make this special and we can actually do it in a way that we can protect the rural character. I think the big buffers go a long way, because if at the end of the day, all you're willing to do is just create larger buffer zones around where you want to grow so that you can coexist, you can grow your city and still let the rural community survive and thrive and still be beautiful, you got to have space between them. And the developer can then cluster. And it works. And it's a product that people, they want. They still have their own little piece of land. They just aren't spread out over the whole property.
And Groveland actually, in Groveland, which is in my district, they just went through this, and they actually redesigned all their, their land use and, how they're setting up, and they're doing it more along these lines. And they're finding that some developers who were, used to doing things what they thought the market wanted, they're actually ripping up some old PUDs that are all approved and ready to go, and they're going to the new model because it gives you more affordable housing, it gives you more buffers, it protects some areas that they want protected, and they're having great success with it. So things are changing, and what people want, I think, is changing, what they expect, and the developers might be a half step behind.
And Commissioner, wait, you guys, I mean, I know I appreciate feedback and all that, but we have to be really, we can't do that in this meeting because we've got to be able to have a dialogue, and that's not going to lend itself to us being able to do that. But Commissioner Parks, is he on the line, and would he like to participate?
I'm on. Good morning.
Go ahead.
Just want to, okay, all right. First, let me start by saying let me apologize for not being able to be with you this morning. I'm doing well, not feeling all that hot, but I thought with the symptoms, be it minor, probably be a responsible thing for me to do to not be in person today. So I apologize for that, but I've certainly enjoyed listening to the dialogue and discussion and appreciate that. Over to the City of Leesburg, I want to thank you very much for hosting us this morning. And I know this is a difficult decision, difficult discussion. I appreciate Mayor, you and I talked last week. Certainly appreciate you reaching out to me and calling me about this. I have not seen, I've only heard about Whispering Hills in terms of not getting into too much details, but just hearing the concepts about it. So only recently am I getting more into the details about Whispering Hills and Hodges property. I think that there's been a lot of good design elements that I have seen and seen some changes. So I definitely appreciate that. I think there's still a few more concerns that I have as well. But just to speak a moment here, and I think, and by the way, I think there's, I really appreciate Commissioner Roebuck, a lot of your comments. I feel like I agree with a lot of those comments. There's a lot in common that we actually have. And I think, I guess what I want to stress most importantly is whatever happens here, I think moving forward is going to be important for us to have dialogue and how we, and looking for opportunities to see how we can address growth in Lake County in the future together, because I do think it is the most prominent, or one of the top two most prominent issues here locally moving forward. I've known that for years, but I think recently it's become quite clear to all of us these zoning cases from around the county that are coming in front of us, how big of an issue it is. So I think it's going to be important to move forward together, excuse me. And in regards to Randall Arendt, I think, and this may be a little bit repetitive, but I do think it is that model of development, the process that's laid out. That's probably the most important, maybe one of the most important words. There's actually a process that's laid out and how you site plan for development. I think the Randall Arendt process is could be very important for us. It's something it's very unique. Lake County's different, whether you live in the city of Claremont or Leesburg, wherever, Astor, wherever it is. Lake County's different. We're not Orlando, right? Nobody here wants to be like the Orlando metro area. And I think what we're struggling with is just this coming up with a way that we can make ourselves unique and protect ourselves from being just anywhere America. And the Randall Arendt model or process is, I think there's a lot of merit to that. Not only because it's friendly for the environment, friendly for conservation, but it's also it's more like us. It's more like us in Lake County. Just the constituents, the people I know that live in the cities or the county. That model, that process is more like us. But also, I will stress that it is fiscally a model that I think is more sustainable for us. I think the existing model of development is just not fiscally sustainable. And I won't go into all the different reasons, but I've been a student of that over the last couple of years in particular, of trying to make sure that development is more fiscally responsible and sustainable. And it's tricky because sometimes you think a development that comes in is going to provide a great economic boost, and there's going to be lots of money that's going to come into the coffers. But when you look at it, 20 years down the road, it actually can be a money sink. And so not all of it, not all development, but just, I think we just, trying to be careful moving forward is what I am doing. And that's just my perspective. So I'm just one commissioner, but I'm probably rambling too much here, but I do appreciate the time. And I, of course, am looking forward to discussions on February 7th as well, where perhaps we can look at a countywide conservation strategy, look at a topic like transfer of development rights, because from a property rights standpoint, that's probably one of the best ways. It respects property rights, but also is a tool that we could use on a countywide level to make sure that some of our rural areas are going to be protected permanently, but it also respects property rights. And then there is an advantage to that maybe you get higher density in certain areas and you have attainable housing benefits that can come along with that. So I appreciate the time, and again, just looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. Did Commissioner Smith want to participate? I wasn't sure if he was set up with a microphone.
He is.
He is.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person. I've had this vacation scheduled for about 3 months. So I'm happy to be here on Zoom. And I want to first of all thank the City of Leesburg for working hard with the developer to address the concerns of the county. As I understand it, the Whispering Hills Subdivision has made a lot of changes to the development. They have taken all the traffic off of number 2 road and put it onto 27. They have almost 50% conservation wetland area, and they're condensing their homes in a centralized area to protect the rural feel of the neighboring to the south and the east. So first of all, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I understand that the growth is going to happen. And this project, not only is it residential growth, but it's commercial growth, which is exciting because residential or commercial places don't use as many services as residential. So I get that as well. And so I just really wanted to reach out and say thanks to the City of Leesburg for at least listening to our concerns. You didn't have to do this. You had an ISBA that you could have done anything you wanted, but you've listened to the county, you listened to the residents, and the developer, in my opinion, has gone above what he was legally allowed to do, and I also appreciate the commitment to the citizens within Lake County. So thank you for this meeting, and as Chairman Park says, I can't wait till February 7th so we can come down with a good plan for all of Lake County.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. And he touched on, some of the cooperation and collaboration that's been going on between our staffs, and I wanted to elaborate a little bit on that, on the number 2 road issue. The last I saw of the Whispering Hills project, I heard a presentation like 2 days ago from their representative, the attorney, Tara Tadro, and she explained about how only 41 units would access number 2 road. And I guess what I wanted to do is get some confirmation from the city that there's an agreement, that we're in agreement that the remainder of that project would have to have some type of secondary access to 27 when it hits a certain level. Or is it only going to have one entrance with something that has the magnitude of, I think the number they landed on now is around 2,300 units of homes. And one access would be really, problematic if you went too far down the road without having an alternative secondary.
Their amended plan that they made the presentation to the commission back in September or whatever, it did have 2. Okay, so the city's land development code is you have to have 2 access points to a subdivision. If you don't, on different roads, point A, point B, separate roads. If you can't get that, the original proposal was 27 to number 2 road.
Mm-hmm.
We made them change to 2 on 27. Okay, if you can't have 2 access, the land development code also allows you then to have what I call the beefed up front entry. So you've got to double the size of the singular entry with different stuff, and then you can have 1 entry. So the concept that they amended it to was the major entry on 27, I think it does, and then ultimately the next phase is the hook to 27.
And that would go through that windmill subdivision? Is that the concept?
That's the
That
plan.
it would have to go through that?
That's the plan.
Okay, but then the way that they're designing the entrance, if you never got to windmill, you would require that large boulevard type access, so that if one side was shut down, you still had passage. I guess the
The
big
large
concern.
boulevard entryway is a requirement. They
Okay.
have to build that, house
Okay.
number 1.
And to me, that probably, this concession was one of the most meaningful and important because of what that would do to number 2 road if that was ever used as another entrance. So that would be really significant. And then on the Hodges, the only entrance to Hodges is Dewey Robbins.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I guess the thing that I had brought up was there a way to do more buffering on Hodges? Because it looks pretty, that's pretty cookie cutter. Whereas Whispering Hills, they've got some unique features. And then the Whispering Hills, there's some multifamily. And I had raised in my letter the possibility that you could really back off maybe 300 feet off of those lines, because that's a pretty intensive use to have next to rural 5-acre tracts and farmlands and so forth. And those are the kind of things that, without going into a full-blown redesign by somebody like a Randall Arendt and doing a master plan, that you could implement, and you could go a long ways to insulating the intensity of this project to the rural lifestyle around it. And I would just reiterate my request for you to to look at that as a way to protect and coexist the surrounding rural areas.
Okay, and we have two city commissioners who haven't spoken yet. We'll get an opportunity at this time. Commissioner Peterson, Commissioner Cannell.
I'll keep my comments fairly short. So I apologize for the head cold. I did have a COVID test yesterday, and I'm negative.
Thank God.
You're going to put your mask back
Are
on.
you telling me this now?
No, I feel fine. I actually feel fine. I think I just need to loosen up here. Let's see. First of all, I think the Elaha area is a beautiful area. There's a part of me probably wishes it wouldn't be developed, but that's not reality. I've been on the commission 3 years. The first development that came before us was Mackleya. I struggled with it. I bought into it from the affordability standpoint. I did go on the record and say that I would not have supported it if it was on number 2 road. Along came Hodges. I was vocal in the first reading and said I was against that development because of Dewey Robbins Road. I didn't think it could support, the traffic. Whispering Hills, I guess I just feel like it's bad timing, for a relationship between the county and the city, because it's the first development that I really got excited about. We've approved a lot of developments, because of the affordability factor. We did some 40-foot lots. I think we've stopped doing that. I'm not even crazy about 50-foot lots. But here comes Whispering Hills. The developer made every concession. It's actually the first meeting I went to on a development where, usually we sit here and just listen to nothing but negative feedback. We get no positive feedback. Whispering Hills was a different animal. There was no negative feedback in that commission meeting. It was all positive because of what the developer had done as far as, making concessions, trying to keep the neighbors happy. So I guess, I'm going to support that development, but I am open to, discussions and how we can deal with, future development, beyond there to protect this area. So that's all I have. And I apologize for my raspy voice.
You got anything, Commissioner Cannell?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you. Any other commissioners, anything to add? Commissioner Byrd? City manager, anything you want to?
No.
It might be helpful if Jeff Earhart could at least talk about Dewey Robbins and the conversation between the county and the city on what would need to happen there as far as the road itself. Is he here? I thought I saw him. Really?
Well, it's coming up here. Isn't it in the PD that any improvements have to be made or made by the developer?
Yeah, that's always.
So,
He
he can talk about it, but that's kind of not our concern.
Try not to be argumentative.
You guys are going to tell them what has to be done if we approve it, and they're going to do it or not build it.
Yeah, part of the process on all these, before your speaker goes up, part of the process, as you guys all know, is you guys review these things. They're on your desk for roads. We send it back to the regional MPO. We get input. Those inputs go back to us. We get your input on roads and larger regional impacts. So we've had that on a couple subdivisions. Mackleya was one of them that the county reviewed and demanded, hey, you got to do this to 48 and this part to Mackleya. So that comes as part of the review process and is put in the PUD. So
And all of those things are important, but in a perfect world, you would always have enough right-of-way. You would always have the ability to widen roads that need to be widened. Unfortunately, the way that the system works, not just here in Lake County, but with this whole idea of impact fees and concurrency, you don't necessarily get to take the road where it needs to be, where, they have to do often minimal things. But a lot of times it comes down to the right-of-way. And I just thought it might be helpful for everybody to hear kind of what the review looked like of that road, whether the improvements that would really need to be made could be made. I know it sounds good to say, yeah, we review it and then they have to do it, but there's only so much they have to do. You kind of have to work with what you've got already, and when you've got rural roads, then they're rural roads.
Hello, Jeff Earhart with Lake County Engineering Public Works. Dewey Robbins, we kind of went through that. That's one of the it's not the best road, but it's better than number 2 road from a capacity and built standpoint. The developer, we're looking to ask them, there is limited right-of-way, so we can only ask them to give additional right-of-way right adjacent to their property, so we're asking for that. And then additionally, we would really like to get paved shoulders along it. We haven't specifically asked for that yet. We're asking for sidewalks along the frontage, as well as left and right turn lanes into the development. We also like to put in the sidewalks and the pedestrian access be between them to get that through. That's what was asked for in our write-up, Commissioner. I guess I could just mention some other traffic concerns with Whispering and all of them. They do generate about 30,000 daily traffic a day, so it's quite a bit. It adds about 33,000 or so to your peak hour. If you look at the study from the traffic standpoint, it does impact there's probably 6 or 7 intersections that are already unacceptable levels of services, and it will make them worse, obviously, and there's 2 that do become worse, which they're looking to do some proportionate share payments on.
And, with proportionate share, you don't bring it up to the standards they really need to be. You bring it up to the amount that you contributed to them getting worse. So, these are the kind of things that I think that going forward, the county and the cities, we can all agree that we can do a better job at. If the cities are taking the standpoint that their job is to grow, if you get an application, you take it, you process it, and you manage it, but in reality, all of that impacts the roads, our entire general fund budget would have to go to accommodating all of this growth, and we would have no other money as taxpayers in Lake County to take care of our other services. So we've got to come up with a better way to handle the road situation. So if cities are going to be facilitating all of this growth, then something's got to give, because we can't, as an entire community, do this the way that it's been done in the past. So, and I don't know where you get, and that's just sort of an academic thing that I want to throw out, that as we go forward and we have more discussions, maybe somebody can come up with some ideas and solutions for how we do it. We talked about, special districts, MSTUs, just some way to handle the additional needs on roads. Because as indicated, we've got intersections that will function worse and that will get worse, and we'll try to throw some money at it as we go, but it's just the reality. That's just how it,
I have to say this. I just totally disagree with everything you said right there on the financial basis. I think the cities, and this is why the city and the Lake County has a good relationship, because we've never complained. We have mixed urban and rural services that we mix together and do quite well. For example, Highlands Lakes and Plantation. Your emergency services, you guys paid the MSTU in there. I would argue that we answer 50% of those calls. We get paid pittance. We're providing the urban services of fire rescue to a large level that allows the county to spend their money elsewhere. You're getting 4, 5 mills is what you guys get, while the city's taking care of the water, the sewer, in this area, investor-owned electric, the gas, the parks and rec. Basically, you guys are getting 5 mills and you got to take care of roads. I know you guys do other stuff, so I don't minimize that. But to come back with this financial argument of we got to come up with a different way to do this, we're taking the load.
Well, in all due respect, when I look at Dewey Robbins and I see the distance from where Hodges Reserve is to Highway 27, and the only control we have as far as right-of-way and widening that road is right where Hodges is, there is a huge space
Your
between there and...
transportation guy just said that you're going to request that they give more right-of-ways.
No, but only along their property.
That's been put on the record so that when that comes to this body, they're going to make sure that the developer does those minimum road standards.
Okay, but that's only along the Hodges property. That's not from there's a big gap between where Hodges ends and 27 begins. And so that's That's where you don't get the right of way.
Here-
That's where you
here's
don't
where
get the
Here's
improvements.
where, I'll just be real direct. The rural, and I don't mean to minimize anything, this rural utopia, I get it, I understand it. It's a pretty world. It's not functional, it's not real. Our job is to manage growth. As I said, it doesn't come, we don't go get it, we manage it. Because growth is among us, growth is around us. We're not gonna stop growing. It's not gonna happen. So the arguments that you're using to tell us to stop growth are not legal arguments that this body can take away the rights of the property owners to stop. They just, I don't think that's possible. You may disagree. I'm not an attorney. To get to the happy rural utopia, you gotta think, we gotta get outside the box. I don't think you can stop Whispering Hills. I don't think you can stop Hodges. Growth is gonna continue to happen. You saw the statistics. So maybe we gotta do this down the road, but trying to stop growth or create this different atmosphere with the current rules and systems that are in place it's not practical. So, all that's to be said is that if we want Lake to be a rural utopia, we got to get outside the box and think of different ways to get there.
Didn't you just say what I
Otherwise-
said?
or,
I said we
no,
gotta
but what
relook
you're-
at this.
But we're saying two totally different things. Because your arguments, in my opinion.
Excuse me, City Manager. Listen, we're having a joint workshop where we're trying to discuss growth in Lake County, City of Leesburg. This is not for the audience to throw out your own conversations. We're trying to have a professional conversation to get to an end result. Well, if you're talking while we're talking, definitely not going to be professional. So here's the people that talk right here up front. This is where the professionalism comes in. We need you to make sure that you can just control and listen to what we're saying. If that's not the case, you know, I'm sorry, but we can adjourn this meeting and meet back here on January the 3rd.
Look, it's not to be argumentative. I think my take on this, and this is my take, I have one person in the room. My take on this is the county is asking the city to stop growth. I understand that. That may be a reasonable request. My response is, under the current rules that guide growth and development, the city can't arbitrarily stop growth the way Commissioner Campione is suggesting. I think if we want to stop growth in Lake and have this rural utopia, we got to get outside the box. And I think if we do it in an arbitrary way that's not rural-centric, you're just going to push the growth to different areas. Like, for example, if we peel back all the ISBAs, you're going to have a free-for-all. You think that Whispering Hills is non-contiguous and non-compact? Well, if we didn't take in Hodges, this body, on first reading. It was a no vote because even with the ISBA, the majority of this body felt it wasn't compact and contiguous. We didn't take in Sundance out there on 48 because we didn't want to put a residential neighborhood next to a county industrial park. So I think the city is doing a good job with the resources. I think the city's doing a good job with planning and development. And if we want a different atmosphere for Lake that's a rural utopia, there's got to be a way that you're not just going to push the bubble. If you peel back the ISBAs right now, you know where Hodges goes? Hodges gets annexed into Groveland. Groveland is that close to Hodges.
That kind of brings us full circle to the discussion about when they put these ISBAs in. That's what they were looking at, is how can we actually delineate kind of.
When the ISBAs
Right.
came out, and I'm going to go back to Commissioner Roebuck's comment. I was there at the tail end of when the ISBAs were approved by these bodies. It was about emergency services. I don't remember talks about utilities, and my perspective was, the county's perspective was, the city's got the utilities because we're the utility providers. I don't remember in-depth conversations on utilities. I remember in-depth talks on who's going to provide the fire services to these enclaves. And the city's response was, we will. The county said, okay, we'll do the non-contiguous annexations.
Right, without a whole lot of forethought about the land use side of it. right?
noted.
Correct? But
But
I
it-
do,
but
but
we
I
didn't
can,
get it in
I
the
can tell you,
agreement.
I do recall specifically this idea of, was
It-
Groveland gonna get there, or was Leesburg gonna get to this area
Okay,
right
and
here?
that's how, that was the formation of the lines. The formation of the lines was around where the cities can get the infrastructure, water and sewer. So that became the natural place to draw the line. The county's concern, as I recall, was, okay, the utility's a good way to draw the lines. You guys have got to cover the emergency services in that box. And the cities who signed up on November 2014 said, okay, we'll cover it.
Okay.
And our perspective was we were already covering your urban.
So going back to
Unincorporated growth.
some of the, you said we got to think outside the box, we've got to do things differently. And that's really where I was trying to come from the standpoint of, we came in here today and we brought up this concept because it works. And
If
it's
that, if that concept doesn't work, and I can give you one great example in Leesburg, Silver Lake Golf Course.
how is, that's not
Silver Lake Golf Course.
conservation
It's
subdivision.
150 acres, was annexed by the city in 2012, 13, 14, to be 352 homes. It hasn't gone yet because it has infrastructure problems right on our edge. And then the concept came of a rural estate concept. Let's, instead of doing the 352 acres, so everyone around said, we're going to make these rural estate 1 acre homes and do 35 houses. That concept hasn't gone because it doesn't return for the developers, okay? And I can give you after the meeting, I'll tell you the contractor to go talk to who tried to do this concept at Silver Lake, and he couldn't make it work because you can't build a big house on an acre and sell it for market. So if that's what we want, we got to fund that. The government has to subsidize that.
I think
I
we're
don't think
talking
that's a
about, we're
bad
talking
thing.
about two different things, so
No, we're not.
And I want to
We're
go back,
talking-
I want to go
We're
back.
talking about the same thing in a different way to get there, that's rooted in money, that's rooted in making the market work.
All right.
Commissioner,
and
do you mind if I weigh in real quick? I haven't
Absolutely.
spoken yet. I hate to interrupt that, but I just wanted to put my 2 cents in before it gets too far afield on the rural protection area, but also the idea. I mean, I was there for the presentation that Randall Aaron did. It's very interesting. I think it's a really neat idea. I think there's probably a market for it in a lot of places, but the point is that there needs to be a market for it. Like, you don't create the market, you don't mandate it. Good ideas don't have to be mandatory, right? And so when it comes to the rural protection area, and I'm not an attorney, but I know we've talked, that's what this boils down to. That's what the county has brought up at all of our meetings. Everybody who lives in that rural protection area made that area less rural by pouring a concrete slab and encroaching on animal habitat. Or whatever, all these arguments that have come up. So I think, a little humility is probably in order for everybody when it comes to the rural protection area, because if you live there, you made it less rural, right? You're a developer, or you created the demand for the developer who built your house, right? So I just think you have to keep that in mind. I think that, as Commissioner Roebuck said, and I've said this from the beginning, every time this has come up, the contiguous annexation is a Leesburg issue. It remains a Leesburg issue. And the county, it's great that we had this meeting. I appreciate the city sitting down with us on this, but it really is a Leesburg issue. When it comes to Lake County in general, this is just kind of a generic comment, but I think a lot of people are sort of treating the rural protection area as if it's a conservation area or something. There's something called the Florida Natural Areas Inventory. That's a catalog of all the areas that are in conservation across the state of Florida. It's a joint project between, the Florida Natural Areas Inventory and Florida State University. And just out of curiosity, I was talking with Melanie about it last week. I went up to pull up the latest numbers on that for Lake County. 34% of Lake County is in permanent conservation. And to my knowledge, that does not count the area that's covered by our navigable waterways. So imagine how much that adds to that percentage. 34% is in permanent conservation. So I think, and I'm not here to argue that rural protection areas don't exist, but I do have a philosophical sort of disagreement with slapping on this land designation that sort of encumbers anybody's future property rights there, you know what I mean? You kind of lock things in the way they are. I just, Western civilization is foundationed on the idea of property rights. And historically, if you see a piece of property and you want something to happen a certain way on that property, the American way is you buy the property and you do what you want with that property, right? You don't have the right to a view of someone else's property. That's come up in zoning proceedings that we've had many times. You don't have the right to a perpetual view of someone else's property. And I know that's hard to swallow, but I'm just trying to be honest with you. And so I think the county, with all due respect, in my opinion, needs to let Leesburg manage their annexation process, which is in turn managed by the state. And so anyway, that's just my 2 cents. I wanted to put that on the record, that this really fundamentally is a property rights issue. And when it comes to the traffic considerations, that all happens as a part of the process. There's nothing we say here today is that's a natural process going to happen no matter what.
Commissioner or Chairman Parks would like to make a comment. Chairman?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to tell the city of Leesburg, I don't want you to not grow. So I want to make that very clear. In fact, I know you're going to grow. I expect you to grow because I expect all of Florida to continue to grow, Lake County included. So right up front, I just wanted to make that very clear that, I don't expect that. What I'm hoping happens is an invitation for us to look at a new model, to look at a new, just a new process, if you will, on how we grow. Because and there's examples across the county. There's a lot of good examples in Southlake, where I'm from, in Claremont, of things that the growth that just wasn't, is not the best for us. I'll just leave it at that. And this is an invitation to what I'm looking at to move forward and looking at a new process, a new model on how we grow. It is not about telling you to not grow. You and us, elected officials, we're equals in this. We're sitting at the table. We are equals. So I want to make that clear. We are in this overused phrase, of course, but we're in this together. And that's the way I'm looking at it. There are some things that just don't, in my opinion, just aren't going to work in the future for being fiscally sustainable or continued patterns of development that just are not us. They're just not Lake County. But I do, again, I want to make it very clear. It's not about curtailing or telling Leesburg what to do and that you shouldn't grow. It's about coming up with this new model, this new process, which, by the way, I think does absolutely respect the private market. I mean, the market economy and property rights as well. The 1 unit per acre example, I mean, the worst thing that Lake County could ever do is if all of Lake County was 1 unit per acre, or a large part of it was, that'd be the worst thing we could ever do. So I do agree with that. That's just not sustainable. A lot of times 1 acre, 2 acre, even 5 acre lots that are fenced in and have, unrestricted land uses in a sense, can be the worst thing, or can be detrimental to the environment, can actually contribute a lot to the road system as well, detrimentally. And that's why I think coming up with a way to look for, through this process, to better address that and creating larger open space areas, just looking for some more larger open space areas and kind of trying to work together on that to obtain that goal.
Thank you, Commissioner Parks. And just in closing, just to kind of wrap things up, 2 things. We came here today in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration. And it could be that some of the things I said were misunderstood. I don't know. I think at Hodges, my point was there's a really big distance from where that property is and 27. So there's a lot of right-of-way that we don't have, that the road just won't be the standard that it should be for a project of that nature. And that was the point, is that you can't fix that because its location is a location that is not optimal for example, for this workforce type housing, the higher density housing, it's just not in the right location for that. And so the ask was maybe relook at that a little bit and how it's designed and the impact that it will have. Just because a developer asks for X number of units doesn't mean you have to give them X number of units. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that we did come here with the idea of maybe there's a better way we can do things and putting it out there, not saying don't grow. I think I acknowledged at the very beginning that I understood too, that you'll get there one way or the other, you will get there, whether it's this commission or other commissions or other landowners that asked to come in. So can we not do something better? And the hope was that maybe we could. And I do appreciate what Whispering Hills has done thus far as far as trying to put some of those larger lots along the east boundary and trying to limit what goes on number 2 road. That is much appreciated. I think that just, kind of reading the tea leaves here, not too hard to do, that if I could just put in an ask for the unincorporated residents that will have to live with what ultimately is decided by the city of Leesburg, consider widening the buffers on Whispering Hills along the perimeters. It'll be perfect for their horse trail concept. They only have like 30 feet now, maybe 50. If you widen those buffers, they would be perfect for creating an insulation between the two and a transition, and it'll also give a place for them to have this equestrian trail system that they say is part of this project. And then the same thing with any multifamily. If you have that 200 to 300 feet in those areas, those are great places to put the open space. And that would go a really, really long way to helping the unincorporated residents that are in these rural areas where you are, choosing to grow. That's my ask. And anybody else want to close? Any other comments?
Yeah, I don't know where you got the idea that we didn't want you to grow. We're trying to look out for our, unincorporated residents and trying to balance, all this stuff out. And we saw a terrific model for how to do it. And so we're just asking for some joint planning, and you're going to get there. We just want the best solution for everybody.
Commissioner Smith would like to comment.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand this project 100%. So, as I understand it, this project has 2 equestrian centers, 6 miles of equestrian trails, along with a commercial aspect, as well as almost 50% of open land, wetland. Is that correct?
We
Our
didn't
planning
get a
direct-
presentation.
Our planning director is saying yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, so again, I really appreciate the hard work that Leesburg has done to work with the developer on this. I think they've taken everything into consideration. We do have a property rights issue. We have a 1 to 5 model on the south and east side of the abutting properties, and no traffic going on to 48 or number 2 road. Everything's being transferred over to 27 as far as I know. So I think the city of Leesburg has done a good job in trying to accommodate everything the county has wanted.
And I think Commissioner Parks finished up with his last comments. So again, on behalf of our commission, we appreciate the opportunity to sit down. We hope that we can do more of this. I totally welcome the concept of out-of-the-box thinking if we can try to address some of the issues that come up when new projects are coming online, and just do some master planning. Maybe we can do, we can all be happy at the end of the day.
Commissioner Campion, I just wanted to verify, is there any change in direction to my attendance at the city's meeting on Monday night to object to the annexation?
I don't think Melanie needs to be there.
Commissioner Parks?
I think it's okay to have somebody from the county be there to listen to the presentation. I think we should at least do that.
Do you want her to object, Chairman Parks?
No.
Commissioner Smith?
I am okay with no objection.
Commissioner Shields?
it's already 3-2, so I don't think it matters.
Very well.
And I think I made it clear where I'm at. I think we can do better, and I wish we could work together more to create something that was, that we could pin down some of these details on that would help with that transition.
Thank you. And on behalf of the city, I'd like to thank the county commissioners and those, Mr. Smith and Mr. Parks online, and those who showed up today for this joint workshop, working together, thinking outside the box. I'm sure our staff would look at new ideas and concepts as we move forward in the future. We'll turn it over to other city commissioners for final comments.
So I guess the only one, I want to clear this up because I believe some of the county commissioners, pushed back on the idea that the intention is not to have us grow, and I think maybe I was a little, if that's the way it came across, the reason that it came across that way is just, I guess, for everyone's benefit and to be fully transparent, is that several months ago I had lengthy conversations with Commissioner Campion about this project and her concerns. And then the developer, to my knowledge, had addressed all of them, which were big requests, right? No traffic on number 2 road was done. Less density on the other side of number 2 road. They went from over 200 units down to 41, which I've never seen a developer agree to do. It was a huge change. And then to restrict and have put in the project into the annexation agreement, a restriction on the amount of age-restricted development. So all those done, they made all sorts of other changes, as has been discussed, and then the request from Commissioner Campion to have the county object to the annexation. That's why I feel the county was asking us not to grow, is I think that they went above and beyond to meet the request, and then we're still being asked, no, don't do it. So that is where that came from.
Well, and the ask wasn't not to do it, it was to incorporate some of this requirements, the requests from some of the other residents.
No, the request was to have your county attorney come and object to the annexation. That was the request.
And just so you know, Mr. Roebuck, we tried to have a joint meeting at the very front end of these projects, and we couldn't.
Oh, we did, and then we were given
it.
one date, we couldn't do it, and then no response back. We sent multiple emails. That's the fact, is we could not get a response from the county on a time to meet.
And see, I don't agree that that's how we attempted to do that. And
Well, I think, we can go back and forth. I think we're here now to move forward. I know there was meetings. I know one Wednesday night I got church, so I couldn't meet that Wednesday. We were talking, but I think, we're at a point now where I would like to see us move forward in a positive direction, considering the county's concerns and thoughts, but also when annexations come to the city, I think that's a city issue. I have no issues with us talking for future, but I think to ask these two developers at the 9th hour to stop, I think that was kind of unfair, and I thought that was kind of a big ask for us, because I think the Whispering Hills, I think they have, as Commissioner Roebuck said, they've done a lot to accommodate the concerns of the residents. They've come to the city council. They've been over backwards. I haven't, as Commissioner Peters said, I haven't seen a developer come with those type of concessions. And every time they make a change, it does cost. It costs somebody. Yeah, they may make a lot of money, but it does cost. So to just go and say there's opportunity, make a change because somebody didn't like the entrance. I mean, those are major changes. So I think that developer did a lot of work. I think this commission has done a great job. We haven't approved everything. We have made developers change their designs, their architectural designs, their buffers. I feel we have done a decent job at pushing developers to grow as a city would have them to grow. But I do thank the county for being here. Thank those commissioners who asked Ms. Marsh to not object to January 3rd. Mr. Roebuck, you had anything else?
I mean, I guess that because I think it was just sent to us. I think it would be appropriate for the rest of the county commissioners to have a list of the long demands that were given to us last night by Commissioner Campion, so they can maybe understand some
we
of our.
copied.
Okay, they got it all. Okay.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. Just want to make sure so they can understand where some of the frustration came from.
They weren't demands. They were topics that I thought could be considered as an alternative to. I tried to present in a way as if you weren't going to go down the road of looking at a conservation design and implementing some of those concepts, that these would be ways that you could implement those concepts into these particular projects. And that was a request. For example, not grading, not changing the topography. That's the kind of thing that goes into conservation design planning. You don't change the topography. You work with the lay of the land and the hills. So it was done in a spirit of collaboration. You know, I'm sorry that it wasn't taken that way. But it was done in the spirit of collaboration and trying to be good stewards and to represent the people of Lake County. So,
Commissioner Cornell, any final comments?
No, sir.
Commissioner Peterson? All right. I think we've exhausted all of our comments. Anything else from the county?
no.
All right. Motion to adjourn.